I think what you're talking about is countries like France and Spain that have presumed consent, which is it is presumed you're going to be a donor unless you opt out. You know, I think North America is different now. When we survey our public in Canada, it's almost split 50-50 in terms of public opinion about whether presumed consent is consistent with Canadian values. But I would tell you that in general, personal autonomy is a much greater value in North America than the cultures that you've mentioned. And that personal autonomy, I think, would go against any government driven initiative to perhaps remove that autonomy. Certainly politicians, in a superficial response, when they're faced with the donation crisis and the insufficient number of organs, etc., they'll say, why don't we go to presumed consent? They're going to try it in Wales after the rest of the United Kingdom decided not to pursue that. What we know, though, is that if you invest in the donation, before that policy change, I think investment in the donation system, personnel, public awareness, consent registries, in many countries has been very successful in increasing donation rates that compete with European countries.
Can you just back up for a moment and explain how presumed consent works? So the family would have to say no, or the person would have to say no, you cannot harvest these organs?
I mean, the policy is you're a donor unless you indicate otherwise. Now, there are some countries who actually allow you to register your desire not to become a donor. But Spain doesn't do that. Spain has the highest donor rate in the world. What they say they do is that regardless of the presumed consent legislation and the opting out, they provide the option to families to opt out. They always get some form of consent. However, presumed consent effectively reflects the societal perspective on the issue. Presumed consent means really your society kind of supports it in general. And so they'll say it's not a significant factor. I believe it is. But you can, if we've surveyed in our research group different countries with different consent laws, and donation rates vary profoundly. In general, presumed consent countries have higher donation rates, but there are countries without presumed consent, informed consent, opting in, that have very high donation rates. And you can look at Philadelphia as one of the world leaders in a country that doesn't have presumed consent. So there are other ways to do it, but you tell me whether the public would embrace that in New York. No? Yeah, I don't think so either.
The Institute of Medicine did a study on this several years ago, and their report said that they thought it was a very ethical framework, but one that the American public wasn't ready for. And we've mentioned autonomy. I think another factor is a lack of trust that we have in our institutions. We have a lack of trust in our government. We have a lack of trust in a variety in each other, and we don't have the same sense of we don't even have the word solidarity, which is a framework and a principle that is invoked and is felt in many European countries. So it's the other side of the autonomy debate. I think there's still autonomy in presumed consent because you can say no. The individual is honored by being able to opt out.
What's the fear? Is the fear that people will be declared dead and their organs will be harvested before they actually are dead?
Well, let me give you an example, because Singapore went ahead and they had a low donor rate. They went ahead and invoked a presumed consent, but they didn't give a societal option, an easy societal option to say no. They didn't say, okay, we're doing this, but if you don't want to do it, register here. They didn't do that. They just made it a policy. And what clinicians in the intensive care units were finding was that patient was dying or going to die very shortly, and then the families were being informed that this patient is going to be a donor because they didn't indicate that they didn't want to, and they were negotiating, families were negotiating with ICU doctors to say, how can we get out of this because we don't want to do this? And so there is the balance between trust of your government in terms of policy and fair balance to the societally beneficial goal of trying to provide transplantable organs. And just to state, I'm on the other side of the line. I'm on the dying, deceased donation side of the line, not on the transplant side.